Right, there we go, we're in. So, welcome to the Psychology of Performance series of professional discussions with me, Tom, and James Barraclough. So, today it's great to welcome Ben Ashdown. So, Ben, we know each other like academically, similar interests, probably similar-ish working background, HE and FE type work. Probably all of us have got that in common as well. But it's great to have you on. Do you want to just maybe tell people who are watching just a bit about you, a bit about your background and interests, and then we'll just move from there.
Yeah, sure. Firstly, thanks for the invite. It's always nice to come and speak about myself, I suppose, to some extent. So, yeah, so I'm a senior lecturer at Nottingham Trent University in sport and exercise psychology. I have been for the last sort of 5 years or so, and that was following on from as you mentioned there, Tom, a role delivering higher education within a further education college, which I was in for about 10 years after, off the back of doing a master's in sports psychology, had a year in a research associate role. Wasn't kind of sure what direction my career was going to go in. A lot of the people that were on the masters went straight into PhD, kind of university roles, but I sort of felt like I had a bit of an itch to do some sort of teaching, and a role came up that kind of combined psychology and coaching. It seemed to match my interests, and as you do, I sort of stayed in it for quite a long period of time. And because of the nature of that work, it was so time intensive that I always had a desire to do a PhD at some stage. And having moved to NTU, that opportunity came up, and yeah, I'm sort of 5 years into that PhD now, so hopefully not too long left on it.
Brilliant. That's really insightful. And I just drawing on your sort of psychology and coaching, like I'd probably say if it were me, I'd say I like them half and half, like half a coach and half maybe an aspiring trainee sport and exercise psychologist. Where do you feel like you might sit on that sort of continuum almost?
Yeah, it's a good question. I always thought, like a lot of people growing up who are interested in kind of PE, I always kind of thought I'd be a PE teacher at some stage. Always played quite a lot of sport, played cricket to a decent level, did a bit of informal sort of coaching. Always sort of thought my skills lent themselves to coaching, to be honest. But then always had this interest in psychology from A levels through university. I actually did a joint honours degree for that reason. Did sports studies and psychology because I just at 18 had no idea. Kind of had a rough idea, like, well, I'll go to university. Didn't quite know what to do or where to do it. Found a course, a degree in York. Had an open day, loved it. Went there, and it was a conversation with Dr. Lee Crust in the third year. He was my dissertation supervisor, and he said, essentially, I think you should go after sports psychology and do a master's with us. I didn't know what a master's was at the time, but took his word for it and ended up doing that. So probably to circle back to your question, initially I probably saw myself as a coach. When we delivered those degrees in those early days at the college, I delivered all the coaching modules, leadership, all that stuff. But I probably now see myself more moving into psychology. I like the idea of working like in maybe a football academy setting or something like that as a psychologist, not alongside the work I do, but whether there's some kind of hybrid option. But yeah, I think the skills of coaching and being a sports psychologist are quite interrelated, really. So yeah, certainly through my research now, I see myself going down the sports psychology route. I don't know that I would sort of actively pursue coaching roles or further qualifications. Yeah, in terms of coaching, awards. I did a multi-skills many years ago, level 2, and then did a few of the FA coaching badges. Probably only had 2 formal coaching roles really. One was I went out to Australia for a couple of seasons to play cricket, and part of that included coaching the under-18s team. So you'd coach them on a sort of Tuesday, Thursday night, Saturday morning games, which is obviously a great experience. And then more recently, I coached Bakewell Town under-18s football. That was maybe three or so years ago. That was another really enjoyable experience. We lost a lot of games. Hopefully it wasn't as a result of my coaching. But I think some of the inspiration for my research came from that experience. I saw a lot of examples of players facing challenges on the pitch. Like I said, we did lose a lot of games. Physically, we weren't as strong as other teams. And I could see in certain players certain clearly observable responses. I thought, oh, this is interesting. Maybe there's something in this, and yeah, that's perhaps led to where my research is going now.
Yeah, nice. Really like that description, and thanks for sharing all that. But you're right, like psychology is everywhere, isn't it? You know, when you talk about your under-18s football and the challenges that each player might face, the motivations they bring, the ups and downs of a season, like psychology is everywhere. So do you sort of see like your emerging sort of psych interest, and it sounds like, would you think your client group would still be coaches and trying to help coaches in psych and the environment, or individuals?
That's, yeah, again, another good question. I've not thought about that actually. I always naturally sort of assumed it'd be working with players or teams, but yeah, I see huge value in coach support, coach development work as well. Especially, I'm really interested in like observational type research and behaviour. So I think that lends itself really well to supporting coaches, doesn't it? Just to sort of not only observe players and their responses, but what are the coaches doing. Sorry, my lad's just come into the room. Yeah, and it's coming up a lot actually in the work we're doing at the minute. There seems to be an interest there in, can we do some work around not only player observation, but what the coaches, but obviously my work's around resilience and behaviours. So if a player faces a challenge or setback on the pitch, we're looking to observe their behavioural responses, but the coaches are also interested in what's my response as well. Am I getting that balance of challenge and support through my actions as well?
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, definitely.
Do that thing that the guy off the BBC did that time when he was like shooting my wife's just come in to. This is a
brilliant. Hello.
It's a professional conversation.
That's staying in that, Ben, you know.
Edit that out.
I'll have to have a part A and B.
Yeah,
James, before we go into like maybe talking about your PhD research, Ben, what have you got any questions you want to ask at this stage, James, or what are you picking up on?
Yeah, I think it's just really interesting. I think there's a lot of similarities between kind of work that Tom's done there, working through coaches and observable behaviours. And towards the end of my D Prof, I started more gravitating towards Tom's work. Obviously, we collaborated together, and particularly, trying to get it out of the classroom onto the pitch a little bit. So, empowering coaches that way. So, I know you just had a paper last year that's come out on resilience. I don't know if you want to maybe talk about that, give that a bit of a plug.
Yeah, definitely. So that was the first study of my PhD. So it was quite a long time in development. So it was qualitative study. So we combined focus groups mainly, and interviews over 2 rounds. We managed to recruit 60 participants to that study across 6 academies and a national organisation as well. And across 15 different focus groups interviews, some of which, like second phase, included reflections on video clips. We got to a point where we essentially talked about what is resilience in academy or youth football? What does it look like on the pitch? What behaviours would you associate with resilience? Yeah, and so you sort of mentioned, I'm also a big fan of Tom's work as well, and I think we've looked at some of these like broader frameworks, and we've really narrowed into one particular topic concept, if you like, and we from those focus groups, participants identified 40 different behaviours that they would say are indicators of resilience on pitch in football. 36 of which are, let's say, positive behaviours, and then they also identified 4 that you might say were like negative or avoidance type behaviours. So a player might make a mistake and they might go missing or start playing safe, those types of things. And those behaviours were across several different themes as well. So we actually saw that not only is it an individual capacity that's demonstrated through things like managing emotions under pressure, being able to move past a mistake quite quickly, or being able to maintain those typical behaviours under pressure. We also found that there were some like relational type behaviours as well. So how do you react and respond to your teammates who are facing challenges on the pitch as well? So do you offer support, feedback to those? Yeah, and there was another interesting one around learning focused behaviours. So are these players able to recognise the need to change and adapt on the pitch, or are they kind of continually making the same sorts of mistakes? So yeah, that study was the start of the PhD journey. So that gave us a bank of probably contextually relevant behaviours that we feel were pretty decent in terms of validity and observability. But we needed more. We basically want to, or we have done, developed an observational tool. So we see this as very much like practical research that coaches, psychologists can use. We then did a Delphi study. So we recruited 55 experts from different fields, not just in academy football, but academics and researchers. And across 3 rounds of surveys, we narrowed those behaviours down from 36 to 10, each of which has got a clear definition and kind of clear observable features. So that was the second study, which then fed into the third one, which across kind of 4 rounds, we've done some work with various participants around observing video clips, longer segments of game footage, testing for reliability, consistency between observers. Some mixed data coming from that. I think it's inherently going to be subjective, looking at how players react and respond on the pitch, and how people label those behaviours. But yeah, we got some good feedback from it. So, for example, some scouts in there were saying that this is something we've really needed in terms of we're asked to give a rating on resilience, but sometimes it's just on a kind of a scale of 1 to 3 or a really sort of broad descriptor. But they've said, well, we've got something a bit more objective and maybe a bit more quantifiable now in terms of, okay, we can pin down specific behaviours. And so the fourth study, we're in doing a season-long study with a Cat 1 Academy currently, which involves workshops with players and coaches, some bits with parents, and the main point of it is to do some behaviour observation. So we've invested in some technology where we can basically got dual plate cameras. One will capture the pitch view, the other one will allow us to zoom in and do player cam stuff. So we're hoping to sort of do that over a long period of time to see if that intervention manifests in kind of behavior change over time, and maybe how those behaviors are different in different situations and stuff. So yeah, that was a bit of a summary of the research.
Wow.
Yeah, really interesting that. So you, in terms of kind of how you obviously say it's probably quite hard with cognitive bias and kind of coaches preconceived ideas, and
yes,
maybe some coaches are are a little less kind of open to kind of this research and sort of thing. But kind of where you go sort of next, I guess, in terms of how you develop resilience. Is that what you're looking at in the workshops and working with coaches?
Yeah, I think so. We found, and speaking to several academies, that resilience seems to be either part of the coaching curriculum or the academy philosophy. We see it, we see it quite a lot. And coaches seem to be I've been quite impressed with their knowledge and understanding of what it is we're talking about. But there is inherently some variation. So yeah, some staff within the same academies have different definitions of what we're talking about. So part of the intervention work has been around clarifying definitions, myths, misconceptions, and then kind of embedding some stuff with coaches through session planning to maybe a bit more intentionally develop resilience through their practice. But again, the amount of stuff that they are doing anyway, I've been really impressed with. It's just that maybe they've not given it that label. So often they'll talk, well, we put the constraints on players, or we do some pressure simulation work. We might have some conversations or video reflections with players post-match. Loads of really good stuff going on already. Also the concept, the challenge support concept seems to be really popular amongst coaches as well. So reflecting on the environment that they create, all that type of stuff. So yeah, ultimately I'm interested in kind of on how that manifests on pitch through player behaviours. But yeah, there's probably talk about future research. There's probably a whole research project looking at coaching practice around that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I've kind of sort of noticed the same thing anecdotally. There's a lot of stuff that's going on implicitly, but with technical, tactical, even physical stuff, it's periodized, but psych's a little bit more off the cuff. So yeah, I think that's kind of our mission as well, really, to make it a bit more explicit and a little bit more written down. And how do you maybe periodize that into the curriculum?
But yeah, Mustafa, my supervisor on the PhD, is really big on the idea of periodization of psychology. He's talked about how can we maybe plan for those bumps in the road proactively. He speaks a lot about resilience people talk about resilience in a quite reactive sense, but yeah, he sees it as something that could and should be planned for, as part of a coaching curriculum. And yes, you'll individualize it, or maybe those challenge and support dials will change at different points across the season. But yeah, I agree. I think this intentional planning and periodization of that stuff is quite important, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like you're saying, like, coaches like already kind of do some stuff. If you were to ask and map it out and practices around challenge and support, or putting bumps in the road, I think you're right. I think coaches already have somebody. They just need a little bit of planning support to sort of solidify that into whatever that is, a planning document, a syllabus, a planned individualized intervention or something like that. How have you found, like, you working with the coaches? Said, like, you've sort of maybe had a look at some session plans, for example, or you may be asking coaches to consider things. How have you found the coaches being in and around this kind of work?
Yeah, so my role, there's a couple of layers to this. So I'm obviously, as a researcher, I'm kind of working directly with and through the psychologists at the club who I've been really fortunate in that it's just sort of really bought into the research and has taken that behavioural framework that we established and gone, this is going to be our curriculum for the season. So yeah, for each of the resilience themes, so the support focused behaviours, emotion focused behaviours, each one of those is a 5-week block through the season as a curriculum. So the psychologist is on the ground every day, leading on the work, delivering the workshops, sitting in on coach meetings and planning. So my work is kind of a bit further removed. So I'm not doing any. The only direct stuff I've done so far was kind of pre-study interviews and conversations with the coaches, which was where a lot of that existing practice came through. But I think as the season or as the project goes on, yeah, I think I'm going to be more involved actually at the training ground. So yeah, there might be a bit more scope for working directly with the coaches. But from what I've seen so far, in fact, myself and Muzz did a workshop there last Monday morning. So we had all the heads of coaching in a room, and we sort of delivered a short presentation, had a discussion, and the enthusiasm and interest in it is there for sure. So I can see that. But maybe some kind of the sort of constrained slightly by maybe that need to develop the technical stuff primarily.
Yeah.
But there's definitely an appetite for embedding psychology within sessions. Maybe they see it as a bit of as not their main priority, but what we're looking to do by working more consistently with them, looking at session plans and stuff, that it'll be seen less of a. We don't want it to be seen as a hindrance. We want the psychology to be. We don't want them to change what they do normally, or we don't want to ask them to do more work, but just something that's more organically in there, and maybe they're a bit more aware of what they're doing and why.
And I think that's yeah, definitely and totally agree. And I think that sounds great for that club that you're involved in, where the psych is on the ground,
Yeah,
in and around the coaches, like whoever's above the psych and facilitating that or promoting that to happen. That's like really good from an organisational perspective, that
yes,
that psych is present and not, down the corridor and has to be in an office or something like that. So that
yeah.
visibility of the psych's great.
100%. Yeah. So he sits within the sort of player education department, and
Yeah.
he's pretty much got free reign. His remit is quite. It's from under 9s to under 21, so he's got a huge remit. With it being a Cat 1 academy as well, he probably needs more support really. But yeah, the club are very supportive of allowing him to run with whatever he thinks is appropriate. So yeah, I mean, probably reflecting on that point there, I've worked with other clubs who probably there's more layers to get through and more yeah, so more people that you need to convince that what you're looking to do is worthwhile. So yeah, again, that's another probably benefit of working with that particular club.
Yeah, brilliant. And I don't know what you think, James. I think it's also like it is natural for coaches when you start saying psychology or psychosocial or mental or things like that. I think it's only natural for a coach to think, well, I do the football bit here. I'm all right. So I sometimes see that, and it does take a little bit of cajoling, promoting, advocating. Don't know if you've seen that in your coaching, James, or coaching example environments you might have been in.
Yeah, I think sometimes as soon as you mention the word psychology, people recoil in horror, don't they? They're thinking of being sat on a couch and talking about all sorts. But yeah, I think there's definitely a sales pitch involved in it. I'm not sure if I work at Cat 3, as does Tom, so I don't know whether you've worked sort of lower down the food chain, Ben. Do you find it easier at Cat 1, perhaps, or?
Yeah, good question. But
I guess
first thing is
you've got more full-time staff there for a start, I suppose, haven't you? And I guess a bit more dedicated in some ways.
yeah. I mean, the first point would be that buy-in I found is so crucial, whether that comes from the lead psychologist or head of coaching or head of academy. That just seems to be the thing that gets you in the door and gets people sort of listening to what it is you want to do. I've had cases where that hasn't been the case. Yeah, Cat 3. So when I say worked with these academies, it purely through a research role. So going in there and just talking to staff. But yeah, I've been to a couple of Cat 3s. Seen quite a lot of variation actually in terms of facilities, One was out the back of a secondary school, sort of in a porter cabin type building. Another one's got probably Cat 1 level facilities, or certainly Cat 2, and loads of full-time and part-time staff. One of those Cat 3s, we've actually got a master's student in there delivering the psych provision, because and that is obviously ethically just workshop delivery. I think every sort of 6 or so weeks, aligned to the 5 C's. So, but that, I think from their point of view, that allows them to say to whoever, whether it's an audit or whatever, that, you know, we have got some psychology provision. And yeah, even in a couple of Cat 2s, I've seen part-time psych staff, full-time, some of whom have very different ideas about what the psychology actually looks like. So yeah, maybe there's a bit of variation, really.
I think definitely, even as you say, within categories, there's a lot of variability. I think it's a lot down to maybe, you know, academy managers, head to coaching there, isn't it, really? Which is they might tick the boxes for the audit, but, you know, as soon as it's a bit like Ofsted, as soon as they're out the building, you kind of do your own thing again. And I suppose,
yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a big I don't know, call out or challenge or for, you know, site practitioners to make the right connections in an organisation like a Cat 3, and probably any organisation, with the right stakeholders, and do a really good job of promoting why psych is important. And I think what of my experience of Cat 3 is, if you get the right people coming with you and you can sell what you're trying to do and promote the importance of what you're trying to do, there's not as many layers. So once you get the green light from a key or 2 key stakeholders, you're often, then you haven't got as many layers to get through, and you can be straight in and on the ground, and you're allowed to do what you want to do. So there's sometimes that big advantages of having been at a smaller, less layered club. And I would imagine, and you know, a Newcastle or a Man City, you can't just get on the grass and get stuck in, can you? Whereas there's probably some more opportunities to build practice in some of those smaller organisations. As long as you do a good job of getting the key stakeholders on board.
Yeah, and in my experience, they tend to be very keen for that additional help and support.
Yeah,
because they're all in it for, like, developing their players and developing their practice. So yeah, I think you're right. I think there is probably, in some cases, a bit more scope in some of those Cat 3s to get stuck in. And
yeah,
but yeah,
I certainly find that. And I think, like, getting coaches on board, and again, I'll draw on like you in a minute, James, but like, I think definitions of coaching excellence, talk about broader athlete development, personal development. We often hear coaches, academy managers, educators coaches talk about we make better people. So it's actually kind of like I feel there's a real intention from coaches, and they just need a little bit of like guidance, support, even like just confidence building to be able to then deliver the psych elements. Because sometimes I still feel, as long as the sessions look like the game, we're only tweaking and layering on ideas. Don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think in general, coaches are extremely good observers, and
Yeah, too right.
Normally very good listeners, and have normally got pretty decent emotional intelligence and can ask good questions. So in a way, yeah, they're doing a lot of psychological work. But yeah, maybe it's a confidence thing. Maybe they feel it's a priorities thing of, you know, my main objective is tactical development. But yeah, I think coaching is pretty psychological, isn't it, in its nature?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it earlier, Ben, when you're trying to embed that psych planning within each session, whether it's using constraints or maybe, you know, taking players off and doing small group work and stuff like that. But it's like I say, you know, when you first start coaching and do coach ed courses, it's quite a struggle to get your head around session planning, the technical, tactical, physical side, but it just becomes automatic, doesn't it? So I guess the challenge is getting coaches to automatically integrate those site bits in and how they're going to coach it.
Well, that's an interesting point, actually. In some of these conversations I've had, I asked the question, through your coaching journey and education, to what extent did you have some content around psychology? And they all sort of said it was a little bit in there, particularly in the Advanced Youth Award, probably more so. But in the main, it seemed like it wasn't the priority.
Yeah.
And similarly in talent ID courses as well, coaching, scouting courses, not a huge focus on psychology. So yeah, I think that's an interesting
Yeah.
point.
I found that I thought the AYA was a really good course, to be honest. I mean, they kind of asked people who they wanted and got kind of people coming in. We had Dave Collins come in, so obviously
Okay.
quite a big hitter. But up to that point, there was pretty much non-existent. So, coaches have got a bit of a reason why they maybe don't kind of have that knowledge, that literacy. It's not really embedded in, particularly in football. I don't know about other sports, but
I think if you remember, James, when we did that event at Beckett, there was a real bit, there was a discussion, and I'd air on a little bit of a divide where some people were saying actually integrating sight skills is a higher order sort of skill in a coach's repertoire. And there was also a body of people that say, no, that this sight skills and psychosocial development's got to be integrated right from day one of your coaching. I'm not sure where I sit, and I think it's an argument for both. It's either like should be in from the start, or is it something else that is an added skill set to a coach? And maybe when we have like you've done your AYA, James, haven't you? Where you have like a site weekend and a social weekend. Should it be there higher order first time you're really seeing this stuff, or should it be on your level one and your playmakers right from the start?
yeah, I think that's a great question for Ben. When do you think, as coaches, we can start getting this into coach ed? Can we
I
make
was,
it kind of level appropriate?
yeah, I mean, probably from my point of view, I'd want to see it right from sort of your level one. So I think it's that important. But what came to my mind there. I was going to ask you a question, given you're more experienced than I am in working within academy footballs, as academy football as coaches, psychologists, and stuff. Is there a possibility that a psychologist might say, actually, this is our domain? You two are very big on integrating psychology with coaching. Would a psychologist potentially have an argument that this is what we do, should be separate to coaching? Like coaches that have the skill set, maybe, or the knowledge to deliver what we deliver.
Yeah, I mean, I think bodies like the BPS and KCs may have a view on that, and they might talk about professional competencies. That they may have a view on that, and I guess it depends what it is, doesn't it? Like you don't have to be sort of HCPC registered to deliver a psychoeducational workshop to give advice, guidance, show stuff. And I wonder whether that's where maybe coaches might sit in and around that they're delivering learning, rather than a cognitive behavioural therapy one-to-one intervention. So in my mind, I think coaches are really well placed to deliver aspects of psychology. And in a learning environment that coaching is really, isn't it? It's learning skills, it's learning tactics, it's learning how to manage yourself in those environments that you put in. So, but I bet there's people who are, staunch sort of accreditation type people that might say, "And what are these coaches delivering for?" But it's a people's business, a bit like teaching, isn't it? We build confidence in our students and education or pupils, and coaches do that, and we build different types of characteristics in school settings. So I think this is like the things we're talking about. I think go beyond football and sport. Really, we've all got a capacity to develop children, young people.
Yeah, I think Dan Abraham said it really well. It's just like a RAG rating, so red, amber, green. So red will be your clinical stuff, which is very much specialist, even probably beyond your sport. So like the amber stuff that's a little bit more specialized with, you need some academic, maybe kind of BPS cases kind of background for that. and then the green, which is kind of what Tom's alluded to, where the coaches can actually get in and do it. So I mean, Tom's argument being that who spends most time with the kids, it's the coach. So not only is it upskilling the coaches, it's we're helping to develop the whole person, not just the footballer, I think.
Yeah, and I think in football, and is our sport, so just naturally we're talking about that. There is a clear like FA four corner model, and we've got that to be able to say, oh, coach is half of it's psychosocial. So I think we've got a nice bit of leverage there to go to stakeholders and say, well, maybe coaches should be, as well as like you say, James, like they're with the players 3, 4, 5 times a week, 10, 12 hours a week. These coaches are with the players. It makes a lot of sense for a site to try to support the coaches. That's one site to one coach to 15, 16, maybe more individuals in a session.
I hear the term psychologically informed quite a lot in that clubs want their coaches and staff, or all staff actually, to be psychologically informed, and probably extending that to parents as well, who talking about people who spend most time with their children. It's obviously the parents, isn't it? Yeah, it's not something that I work in necessarily, but I know some people do, and I think that's an important one as well.
Yeah, definitely. And you talked about you did some stuff with parents. Like what was that? Was it delivering some workshops with them about the work or about resilience or a bit of both?
Yeah, so in the project, this particular project, it's very early stages, we've sent out an initial kind of survey to parents around how would you define resilience? What do you think your role is? How do you think you can develop the resilience of your child? With a view to delivering some educational workshops to them. We've done, myself and Muz delivered a webinar last season actually to a Cat 3 parents around what is resilience, what is it not, what are the myths, what are the misconceptions. Again, interested in looking at the data. Some of these parents have very different views of what they think resilience is. Some saying it's this capacity, or you just keep going regardless of, despite pressures, you just keep plowing through, and some see it as recognizing it's a need to adapt, reflect, rebound, those types of things. But yeah, so I think there's probably more work for us to do there. In terms of working with other stakeholders as well, we're quite keen on integrating performance analysis as well with the work we're doing. So rather than doing like your typical, I suppose, your informal observations, we think there's a way of integrating some of the methods that analysts use through kind of video analysis, clipping, reflection with players. Some of that could be player led, so as part of their development plans, we're probably going to task them with clipping some examples of resilience in games, all for the benefit of development, really. So yeah, we've hopefully got a paper coming out soon, which is essentially a conversation, what do they call it? Not a conversation piece, but it's a commentary piece where we're advocating for the integration of analysis with psychology a little bit more, to, I suppose, to generate a little bit more objective kind of behavioural data, which can be used to maybe track players over time and be a decent measure to look at, is your intervention work having an impact on the grass, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
James,
is that more the qualitative bits of performance analysis you say about clips, rather than trying to quantify it, or is it a bit of both?
Yeah, probably a bit of both. Yeah, I don't know how much value there would be in actually quantifying that you demonstrated X number of behaviours during this game against this opposition, or maybe there's some value in that. Maybe if you're looking at kind of some comparisons and some contextual factors, so like game state. So when we're ahead, you demonstrate this, or when we're behind, or when we're away, or when we're playing high quality opposition. But ultimately, I think the most value would be in clipping examples of these psychological behaviours, for self-reflection. I always found as a player myself, whenever I had the opportunity to watch myself play, I was noticing so much stuff that I didn't realize I was doing, and I think that's so powerful for self-awareness more than anything else.
Yeah, so that's quite, I mean, one theme we've had pretty much in every discussion we've had now is around autonomy. So, what's your kind of views on that? Obviously, that's helping to develop that, and the link with that and maybe resilience.
Yeah, autonomy from what point of view?
From players, kind of like you say, being able to sort of self-evaluate and basically, I guess it's kind of making them developing sort of the psychosocial skills really, and making them almost like employable and developing beyond the player.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're trying. We've started doing through the Huddle platform. We've started to ask players to almost manage it yourself a little bit. So bring examples to us of where you think you've demonstrated resilience during your last game or during training. Yeah, whether that's developing some wider skills alongside in terms of these players being able to self-manage and that type of thing, maybe. I use the word players ed, and that's another point I was going to make earlier on. We, as part of our support focus block, we asked the players. We sort of done some kind of age appropriate sort of gamification type stuff as part of this intervention. One of which was a bit of a booklet that we're working through, and one of the tasks was identify on this map who the people are that you would go to for support as an academy football player. And I don't know what I was expecting, but some of these we're working with under 13s, 14s, 15s, and I'm looking at these workbooks, and so many of the players had put mummy and daddy, and that made me think, oh my word, we're dealing with children here, aren't we? That was a real big moment for me actually to think. Maybe at some level I was just thinking, oh, these are football players, but actually working with kids. So that's
Yeah,
a
I
good
think
reflection point.
yeah, I think that's probably changed over the last couple of generations, hasn't it? Really, with I was a generation that had boomer parents, and you were more of an inconvenience than anything else as a child. But yeah, it does seem that I don't know, anecdotally, that kids do generally maybe seem a little less resilient these days. So yeah, it's definitely good we've got these tools in place.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just looking at the clock and things like that. But I think as we maybe start to draw to a close a little bit, what go on, Jen, I'll put you on the spot now. What would be like your top three sort of piece of advice for coaches who maybe would like to consider developing resilience in children and young people through sport, or if you want to link it straight to football, what would be some advice you might want to give, maybe based on some emerging PhD research or just your experiences?
Yeah. So I was scribbling some notes down here. As I do these things, I'm quite conscious that if I speak straight away, I end up, just speaking a bit of nonsense. So I think three things. First of all, know what it is.
Yeah.
Know what it is. So there's so many misconceptions around resilience, and yeah, it's become a bit of a buzzword, hasn't it? So I think everyone being on the same hymn sheet, let's say within an organisation, whether that's football academy or elsewhere. Muzz is really big on that. The example from British Gymnastics, where off the back of the White Review, resilience was understood as one's ability to suffer, and off the back of that, naturally your coaching practice would follow, wouldn't it? If you think resilience is your ability to suffer, then I imagine your coaching environment is going to be pretty unrelenting. So know what it is that you're looking to develop. So just make sure you've got a clear definition, aware of the misconceptions, know what to look for. So as I said earlier, I'm a big advocate of observation and behaviour. I think it gives us such a really good indicator of psychology in real life. So know what to look for and yeah, understand that the third point would be to make it individualized, so there's no one size fits all. People react differently to pressure, different intervention. So understanding your players, that's just probably a kind of a basic of good coaching, but understanding your players, knowing what would work for them, knowing when to turn those challenge and support dials up and down individually, and just probably be a self-reflective practitioner as well, so, or self-aware one. So understand put yourself in the shoes of your players, kids. Try and get a feel for what do you think your environment actually would be like to be in as a player. And just having really good self-awareness, I think, is a good skill to have.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, and an ability to manage your own emotions probably as well is quite important.
Yeah, really good. That's me for question. James, you got anything you want to ask or probe? We've got
probably
Ben.
talk for several more hours, but yeah, fascinating topic. But yeah, maybe another time, Ben.
Yeah, mega.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on and giving time there, Ben. That's like really, really, really insightful for coaches and sort of the sports psych type people that are likely to listen to this. So yeah, really helpful.
It's a pleasure, and yeah, really enjoyed the chat, and yeah, hopefully it will be of use and interest to your listeners. So yeah, thanks again for the invite.
Thanks for coming on. Good to meet you, Ben.
Okay, and you.